Hello and welcome to another Mr. Beats Byte video, and in this one we're looking at the Osaki VCR34H, and this machine is a repair that's been sent in to me, and the owner of the machine wants to remain anonymous, which is cool, but I really wanted to feature this. I would say that in my list of machines, this range of machines would be right at the bottom of my list of what I'd want to sort of show or willingly go into as a project to repair, restore, whatever. But I repaired a lot of these back in the 90s. I mean, a huge amount of these. These machines were incredibly unreliable, had all sorts of problems. Now, I will say I've not seen the Osaki version of this deck, but believe me, this deck in various different forms have been used by Amstrad, so models VCR6000 and VCR6100, Hinari, so VXL8 and VXL12 are very, very similar. The Sentra VX8500LP and 8600LP. Nikkai also did one, a J1. And of course we've got this, the Osaki deck. SEG VCR4530. I'm pretty sure Funai also had several decks that use this mechanism and various sort of different types of electronic format boards for their machines. Yeah, so the PCB layouts do vary between the models to a certain extent, but the deck is common. Deck itself is actually pretty good, has several belts, but it's pretty solid. Other things that are notable about it, it was a really cheap and nasty deck. These were rented out in huge numbers. Various rental companies, sort of in the early 90s, I suppose it would have been, they basically took the view that if they did 3 years, they tended to last fairly well, but if they broke, they'd just be thrown out. No point in sending an engineer to fix them. They just throw them out, change them with another one. So yeah, it was very wasteful, but cost effective because these decks were cheap. They are short play, long play, and but they are only 2 head. The quality is not that great. Main reason for that is because they only use 32 micrometer cores as compared to the usual sort of about 49 micrometer head chip cores. So yeah, it's not going to be picking up the same level of signal off the tape. Although that did allow for long play, and yeah, fair enough. But it's a cheap machine, so in a lot of ways I like this machine because it did bring video and VHS to the masses. Very, very cheap machine, but my goodness, they were not good. The build quality was questionable, and a lot of corners were cut. But yeah, so without further ado, let's crack on and see what's actually wrong with this machine. With this, apparently one of the main issues with it is logic, and apparently it goes a bit haywire. At the moment it seems to be behaving, but I did have it on the other day and it was doing all sorts of crazy things. The sort of randomly selecting different functions. I know dry joints are a problem on some of the larger chips on these, so I was sort of wondering if that might have been the case. I have also known the crystal oscillators go bad on these. On the Amstrad ones especially, I seem to remember changing the odd crystal on them. Other things that are very common with these are power supply faults, with things like bridge rectifiers going open circuit across one diode, and I think the capacitors are actually fairly good, but you know, it's getting on a bit. I mean, I think this dates from about 1992. I could be completely wrong there. But it seems to point to that sort of age. I do have a manual of sorts, the very guess what it is type manual. There is no name on this, just a model number. But I bought this for Hinari VXL8, which is about the nearest deck I can find, or machine I can find, to this machine, and I've got this, which is actually an SEG, a SEG. So yeah, now the main differences I can see so far going through the circuit diagram is that the SEG has a SCART output. This actually has BNC in out for video and one phono for the audio side of it. So to anyone that worked on video recorders in the trade back in the sort of early 90s, early to mid 90s, this will look incredibly familiar. So these decks, these are actually not bad at all. I mean, they're built to a budget, but they're pretty solid. Pinch roller and belts, of course. Belts are always a problem. These have quite a few belts underneath, and we'll have a look at those in a minute. One thing that is notable on this one is that it has no mains fuse, so it's totally relying on the fuse and the plug. These two fuses here are the output, on the output side of the transformer, and are the only, well, pretty much the only protection. Pretty simple power supply, bridge rectifiers, lots of caps, a couple of regulators, nothing terribly scary there. Then we've got where the SCART would have been on different models. The AV in else is down here. Then we've got a clock up here, and I guess logic as well. Pretty certain that's going to be logic in there. And then underneath we've got all the signal circuitry and whatever. Not too sure what that is yet, but no doubt we'll find out. So deck quality looks pretty good. Not too much wear. And the machine itself's really tidy. Let's place our bets. Obviously this is a little bit more important because we've got no fuse actually in the unit itself. Place your bets. What's the fuse going to be? I think, given the quality of this machine, the way it's been looked after and loved, it's going to be 3 amp. So let's have a look. It's 13 amp. Oh no. Oh, honestly, this is why, I know I've said this in so many videos, but this is why molded plugs is really the way to go. I have put, in case you're wondering, all this insulation tape is covering up postcodes and address information at the request of the owner of this, and I would do it anyway. Basically, pretty much every panel on this machine has a postcode or an address and or on it. And yeah, it's been well and truly marked to foil any potential thieves, I suppose. So yeah, let's have a look at the underneath. The belts. Yeah, so I think we're going to need a belt kit for this. Yeah, it's pretty grim. Capstan belt has actually gone so gooey, it's actually wrapped itself back around the capstan. This is a loading belt here for the front loading system. Then we've got loading here, deck. That belt's not much better, to be fair. It's got some springiness there, and yeah, so there we go. Again, all very much built to a budget. That board on the top, actually, this terminates here, so this is obviously something extra to the tuning section by the looks of it. Yeah, so I think the next thing is to change the belts. I have belts and the clutch kit and pinch roller for the tape creasing side of things that these decks suffered with, the clutch and or belts. So I'm going to fit the belts. I'm not going to worry about the clutch kit yet. I want to get the deck working first, and we'll see what it's like. But I will do the clutch kit. I'll include that in the video, I'm sure. So, just looking at it, it's actually fairly clean. Around there. That pulley there is fairly marked, so we'll give that a clean. And everything else looks pretty okay, so let's crack on and get that cleaned. Yes, that's pretty clean. What I didn't show was there was actually quite a build-up of gooey rubber on one part of it. It was literally like glue. So I cleaned this with Brasso to start off with, just to get it going. Get off the majority of the rubbish, and yeah, there still is a bit of a line there. Oh no, that's just a mark on the actual pulley. I might just try and give that another little clean, but it's how the belt sort of sat on the pulley. But yeah, and then I use some isopropyl. I'll just clean off any potential contamination from the Brasso that I used to clean this up, and also remove the tacky bits of rubber. So yeah, that's pretty much good to go. I might just give it just one more going over though, just to be sure. So let's do the belts. Now we have one belt that is a bit tricky, belt that goes basically from here to under here. For the front loading system. Now the two potential belts this could be, and they are slightly different sizes. So that could be that belt, which I think it is, and that is that belt. So let's do that. So this is the larger of the two belts. The larger one I'm putting over here, and probably this is a bad idea because I'm going to need to get the other belt on, and this belt may well get in the way. Now in theory it would be really nice to actually take this out, take the deck out, which I think in essence is what is expected almost, but I seem to remember, and remember I have done a lot of these decks, so and what's amazing about me saying that is I can't remember a single thing about them. It's just literally I think I must have had such a bad just so underwhelmed with these decks. that I just didn't really remember anything about doing them. And I think we're there. That's not difficult at all. There's a bit of metal that gets in the way as well. So one part of it needs to go the other side of a metal assembly. I'll show you that in a second once I get the belt in situ. Let me put that in the complete wrong place. And then, probably should have put this on first, really, but it's fine. It's not like I'm straining anything. Capstan belts, and then finally the big belt that drives the reels. And that belt is not. I haven't done a good job there, have I? That'll do for now, because I mean, it's slightly twisted, but that'll do for now because it's all going to come out anyway when I do, as and when I do the clutch. So that's cool. So belts all done. I can now dispose of the old belts. I never throw away the old belts unless they're obviously just completely gloop, because you do need to know if the new belts are actually the right belts. So many times I've bought belts and the belt kit has actually been slightly different, either missing a belt or additional belts or whatever, and you have to sort of work out which is the right size. And having the original belts, if they are intact, does help with that. It just gives you a bit more of an idea. So don't throw them away before you've checked them against your new belts and new belt kit. So that's all good to go. So we know the belts are good now, which is always a good start. And I've tried it and still no joy. It's still playing up. So we know we've got some sort of issue with the electronic side of it. I've manually loaded a cassette, and you can see here that it's recognises the cassette. It's allowed me to set the clock, but it's very, I don't know, it's quite hit and miss. Oh, yeah, that is now sort of working. But it's a bit hit and miss when I hit the power button. And LED is still on, even though the display's gone off. Ooh. So well, yeah. I did actually get a play symbol briefly. And it's gone to external outputs. So, I think we need to investigate further. Before I start checking out the power supply side of it, I'm just going to take the front off and just check that everything is okay with the buttons and with the print, the PCB, and yeah, just do a general sort of check over. So let's do that now. So, quite a few tabs there actually. We'll clean all this up as well, make it look nice. As you can tell, I'm very optimistic I'll get this going. But yeah, maybe I'm a little bit too over-optimistic. That there's a little bit of some sort of earthing going on there. Front looks pretty good. So you can see here all these extra bits of unused legend on the board, and these would have been for all the different types or variants of this machine. Extra LED there, or move that LED for different fascias. So yeah, interesting. And here as well, just how many different positions and different functions as well. But in a lot of cases, these will be just duplicating these existing buttons for different layouts for the different brands, just so they looked different on the shelf in the shop. But yeah, it's I mean, I know they're really built to a budget, but they were very cheap machines. And that's partly why I like them. They're sort of a machine for the people. So people that normally couldn't afford a machine, something like a Panasonic or a JVC or whatever, they could buy this, and if it gave them 3 years use, you know, for I don't know how much they sold for, a couple of £100 probably, then that was fine. So let's have a look at this. A couple of transistors, bits and pieces, caps, what you'd expect really. Interested to know what that chip is on the heatsink. Chip there, we've got the backup memory capacitor there. So yeah, I mean it's not bad quality. It is certainly to a budget. It reminds me of sort of the stereos you could get that were dirt cheap, the Alba come Bush come whatever from the 90s. Really built to a budget, and they were pretty awful, to be honest. But like I say, I'm not dissing this, because it's quite an amazing piece of history in many ways. Just pottering around with this machine, really, just giving it a visual inspection. I've just been checking the circuit diagram as well, and just sort of contemplating actually doing the voltage checks, just checking for ripple and whatever. And I was looking at the top of the power supply, and this fuse here looked weird. You probably can't see that, especially with the stripes on it, but the wire inside was sort of wiggly, for want of a better way to put it, rather than straight across or an angle straight across. It was sort of distorted. I don't think this is like blown heavily. I think it's just stressed and with age and constant powering, repowering, whatever, and just gone. Which is something I'm starting to find more and more on these older machines. The fuses they'll just fracture. They just become tired. Every time you turn these things on for the mains, in a lot of cases, the fuse is slightly stressed and will flex. And over time, that continual flexing is like anything with a wire or whatever. You keep flexing it, it will eventually just break. And I think that's what's happened. Now this goes across, this capacitor here goes across that rail. And I was a bit concerned about this capacitor anyway. It's an 85 degree, it's not the best quality, and I am really tempted to probably recap the whole lot, to be honest, because I know the owner wants this machine to be good, as good as it can be, which is great, because these machines need saving, because they're not going to be any left. So it's nice that the owner is so enthusiastic about it, and yeah, salute him. So I may well do that and just replace these with 105 degree, decent quality caps. We know the power supply is good then, and will continue to be good. So yeah, to get this out, it's actually quite straightforward. There are two screws, one here, one here. So here and here. Undo those, unplug the connector, and out it comes. You don't have to worry about the screw here. The screw literally just holds the uprights for the mains cable. And then to get this off this, which probably you don't need to do, to be honest, this is literally 2 screws, which are just the thicker, the larger self-tapping. And then there's this unique screw to this set with an extra flange on the top of it, which goes through the heatsink here. So yeah, I'm going to recap this and then we'll give it a go. Well, I think that answers that question, why that fuse blew. it's just really, just completely and utterly gone. You can see the rubbish it's left there. This, I'm going to say it's really horrible. This is actually just glue. It's not this we're looking at, it's this white stuff, and it's leaked. It's not happy. So yeah, that's a good find. Okay, you can see the glue here. I'm going to change this one as well. Some of these I might not change. These 50 volt 100 microfarad ones, I might leave those, just because I don't think they are going to be causing problems. I mean, they look good. You can actually see underneath them. They haven't leaked. And I don't think I've got these anyway. If I had them, I'd probably do them, but I'm not totally worried. And they're for tuning as well. It's not really going to have much of an impact. I mean, some of those rails will be used for the VFD as well. So I'll see. If I can do them, I will. If I can't, then I'm not going to worry too much. But I will do this other one here, and probably there's a 470 16 volts, which I'll probably do. It's a low voltage rails, really. I'm going to be more worried about 10 volt, 220 microfarad, put 16 volt in there. And what's that one? 220 as well, 220 at 10 volts, so 16 volt one will go in there. So I shall crack on. So just testing a new capacitor. I actually found a 4700 microfarad capacitor, 35 volts, which is fine, and that tests fine, so we'll use that. Let's see if I can test this one. Intrigued to see if this reads okay. I know it's bad. Yeah, it actually reads okay. Slightly high, but this is leaking. It's losing its ability to be a capacitor, and is becoming a fairly heavy-duty resistor in its old age. All that together, change this, a couple here, this, and obviously the fuse, 1.25 amp, slow blow, T. So just to clarify, to get this out, screw here, this screw here, don't worry about the earth, and the whole lot will just lift out, unplug this connector, and this also has an earthing ground rather cable here, because the top of this can goes to here, roots underneath to there on a screw. This is a standard screw, and this one is actually a self-tapper. So yeah, just so you know, for taking it apart, but it's actually really easy, and the print is fairly good quality. I did cheat a bit with the soldering, but yeah, it was fine, no problem at all. So I suppose the next thing is to check it. So just tested the two 220 microfarad 10 volt caps, and they're both bad, like really bad. So that should be 220. 20% loss, ESR 5.4 ohms, and which is the other one? It's this one. The 470 16 volt was fine. We can get this in here next. Yeah, so that's the other one. 16 ohms ESR. That's just crazy. So yeah, that was a good move, I think. The rest all seem to be okay. Like I say, well, I've shown you what I've replaced. I do find these 10 volt caps do tend to be troublesome in old kit. I get this with Sony's as well, that they just never seem to be particularly good with age. So I tend to, if I see the 10 volt ones, I will just change them anyway, to be fair, especially in more critical areas where they are stressed, like power supplies and whatever. So yeah, so time to test. I've run it for a while now, and it is very evident that the pinch roller and probably the clutch as well really does need to be replaced. It works pretty well, but the tracking is a little bit hit and miss, and it is sort of, I don't know, the take-up torque feels as if it's too high, basically. But I do actually have another problem, and you might pick this up earlier. There is a bit of a grinding, and it's actually coming from this loading gear here. So I need to investigate that to see what's going on. It works fine, but obviously not correct. So what I was going to do is going to do the cheating method of replacing the clutch, which is to fold the front loading system into loading, take out the back two screws. See them, there's one of them, another one under there, and then press eject and take out that screw, and you can lift that out. But I will have to take off the front loading system to investigate that grinding gear. So let's do that. It does mean I've got to take the front off again and the belt, but it's all the fun. And yeah, why it's just great working on these machines and the way I do. But yeah, don't save myself, do I? But yeah, so let's crack on. Then to get the front loading system off, it's these three screws, either side here, and undo the belt underneath, and then it's a little bit of a jiggle to get the pulley to come through, but it's not too bad. So this should, with a little bit of gentle persuasion, come out. And let's put that out of the way. So there's a cable that runs to the array's head that goes through here as well. I suppose we could unclip that so we can remove it completely. And little PCB based plug. So, looking at the gear, what on earth is rubbing? Can I remember? It's a long time since I've done this. I've done enough of them. Now, first thing you've got to do before you do anything else, take this belt off. And that pole is the loading system belt. And then there's a split washer there. There's a split. Move that. Of course, you should replace that. But I'm not going to. Probably. I don't know. If I have a new one, I will. They're not the easiest things to find, to be honest, these days. So, and the ones I have found have actually been lower quality than the ones I've taken off from back in the day. So, yeah. That's quite tight. Slightly larger screw. So 2 small screws here, slightly large screw here. I did actually not use the right screwdriver for that screw. It's a bit big, but it's still bit enough to get in. Move that assembly. See there, that's all good. But I am intrigued by this. What's going on there? Does this not have the clutch? Does this not need it? Ah. No, I don't think it does. This is a different deck. Oh, there you go. So I'll just use the pinch roller out of this, and yeah, we should be all good. So I decided to relent, and I have actually removed the deck. It actually makes more sense now. I'm sort of doing so much to this now. I've got a bit carried away. So easy enough to do. Take the front loading system off with the 3 screws on either side. Then there's a screw at the back. Screw at the back here in the middle, which is just a standard self-tapper. And then there's a screw here, and buried away under there. Can I show you? Somewhere there. 2 of these that does sort of, they don't hold the deck, but they support it movement-wise. Take those out, and you can sort of maneuver the deck out, so it isn't bad. So putting this back together, and I did actually have a bit of an issue. My camera overheated. It sort of missed out a whole load of footage. So I've already put the 2 small screws on the other side of the front loading system in. So just put these 2 in now, and then we'll drop the deck down, put the screws in, and give it a go. I can't find what the issue is with that gear, why it's making that noise. There's nothing fouling it, it's absolutely fine. But obviously something was causing an issue. So just have to be careful of the front loading cable. Make sure that's in. So if you're doing it properly, this is how you do the front loading belt with the deck out. This is as easy as putting that round the pulley, which I've done really badly, and then around this pulley here. You can see what I was describing earlier with this metal bar here. This part of the belt has to go the other side of that. But as you can see, it's much easier to do it like this. And somewhere I have the real drive belt as well, so might as well put that on as well. I mean, I have to say, it's not a bad design. I know you have to take the deck out, ideally to get the best out of, or the easiest access to the belts, but it's not bad. One thing worth noting is the belt for the front loading system. It needs to go on the bottom portion of this pulley. You see there's another sort of, it looks like there's a portion for another pulley here, another belt. And that actually locks into this belt here, so this moves over to rub against this belt to drive the front loading system. So just be aware that you don't want the belt in this top one. So I have greased it. It's great. It's actually a really nice deck. This has been a very well looked after machine. So let's drop this down. And so I have to do it from the front and then back. The shielding screen for where the heads head connections is a bit of a pain, so you just have to watch that. Then first of all, I'm going to put in the screws for the damping. Get those in first. So either side of the back of the deck. Then not forgetting the ground strap. Then routing this cable, there is actually little clips for it to clip into. Then behind the can, and then it sort of just falls into place basically. I think they should all be behind there, so at some point obviously this has been worked on, because they aren't behind there. There we go, that's how they should be. So the ribbon cables need to be behind this plastic so they can basically just keep out the way of stuff. So yeah, that's cool. Next thing is to put this cable in. Cable management for the erase head, for the raise head. Done. Then we've got this grounding connection here. The screws that mount through the front loading system holding the front of the deck. I actually wonder if the problems with this is purely down to that ribbon being a little bit pulled the wrong direction, so it's touching the gear, but we'll see how that goes. Okay, so let's get the front on. And then this section. Power it on and see how bad it is. Let's put some power on it. So I think we're almost there, bar putting the covers back on. I did end up doing quite a bit off camera because there's a couple of things that were puzzling me about this deck. You'll recall the loading issue that I was having. Now what that was all about was basically how I put the deck back in, and essentially it wasn't lined up properly on the plastic. So the metal chassis was slightly too far back this way, as it had mounted onto the plastic, and I remember now that you need to put these screws in first when you're putting the deck in. Make sure that the deck is properly and fully see the holes that these screws screw into through the metal of the chassis and the front loading system. Make sure it's sat properly there, and then put in this back screw. How I did it is I put the back screw in first and then put these screws in, and it had just pushed it too far this way. So yeah, so that's one tip. The other thing I was finding was I was getting all sorts of weird, wonderful sort of tracking errors, and this here, this guide here, if you sort of put your finger on it, it would click into place and it would sort the problem out. And what I actually found out, and this is a bit odd really, this screw here was really, really loose. So tighten that up. This one was also fairly loose, but it wasn't really causing a problem, so tighten that up as well. So that's another thing to watch out for. is those screws working loose. There's no thread lock or any locking on those screws, so I suppose over time they do just work loose. Pinch roller, I'm not happy with this pinch roller. It's working fine, but the bearings are not the best, so I'm going to change that with another one. I've got several actually kicking about. I can always nick one out the kit. The clutch kit, which I'll probably use the pinch roller from, that is for the earliest style of this deck. I think it's the Amstrad 4600 that uses that clutch kit. This one actually has a better clutch, so, and there's therefore no modifications or anything for it. It just works well, so that's all good. So yeah, I'm just currently testing it, and it's actually, this is a long play cassette, and it's actually not bad. I mean, that's for VHS, that's quite usable. There's the still. It's a two-head machine. I mean, you do get a noise bar if you sort of advance the pause, but that really isn't too bad, is it? I mean, I have done a bit of a tape alignment. It's a bit rough and ready how I've done it, but it was just a tiny bit out. Chances are I might have to do it again if that pinch roller is dodgy, but you know, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Now, one thing on the alignment of VHS decks, let's just press stop and eject. So you'll see what a lot of people will do is they'll just put a screwdriver in the top of here and adjust them, and you can get away with that, but you'll see down here you've got locking Allen screws, and these need to be slacked off ideally, so you don't damage the thread basically, because these are actually going in and locking these. And so many people just go in with a screwdriver and they start damaging the guide, the base of the guide that's in here, and or taking the end off the Allen key, basically just making it so these will shift on their own. So if you're going to do it properly, you need to slack these off before you adjust these, get it adjusted, then tighten them back up. Like I said, I've seen it countless times where these things will just move because these have just been worn down by so much fiddling, and they're no longer clamping. You can tighten them back up retrospectively. Now, the downside of that, and sometimes why you have to do it with them tight, is they do put varnish. I think you can see there's varnish there. And sometimes that varnish can be so solid that you can't undo them. You just can't undo them at all. And indeed, you'll almost end up stripping the hex. So there is that downside, but really that's what you should be doing, is undoing that before you do the alignment. So yeah, so it's had a full grease. As you know, the belts all changed. So yeah, really pleased with the machine. I sorted out the grating that was happening here. I still don't know what that was, I have to say. I think it was something to do with this ribbon cable. This is quite long, and it sort of goes down and sort of out and then round. And I think it was just catching the teeth of the gear slightly. It's the only thing I can think it was. But yeah, that's fine now. And the deck itself, it works really well. I'm very pleased. And it's nice to think that really it was a power supply fault, because I was dreading it possibly being the electronics and not being able to find a part. But yeah, certainly worth noting that if you do have random sort of logic going on here, and strange behavior and all sorts of functions sort of trying to happen all by themselves, but with no motor drive, is going to be this rail basically, or one of the rails will be missing. I still don't actually know what rail that is. I think it's the 12-volt rail, but I could be wrong. I might put it in the description once I've worked it out. But yeah, so with that, thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this one. It's a bit different, and I wouldn't in a million years have thought of actually working on one of these machines. So thank you very much to the person who sent this to me for repair. They've really given me some fun with this. And I hope you enjoy using it as well when you get it back. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Really means so much to me for doing that. Thank you, and keep the comments going as well. It's great. I've had some really nice comments, and I do pick up on. If you've got any suggestions for videos as well, let me know. And you know, I've already taken on board a few comments of different videos to do in the future. So with that, farewell for now.